What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we have another solid collaboration between me and my boy Cam over from Forging Theories. And today we're going to be running it a little differently. We're going to say our top 3 hits and our 1 miss from the movie Eternals, and then we're going to get into a Forging Theory Zoom call where you guys can stick around and watch all the crazy theories that we come up with based on the post-credit scenes, potential sequels, or any crossovers or anything of that nature. So go ahead and stick around for that. Without further ado, I'm going to hop right into my top 3 hits and my 1 miss. So let's get to it. So for my number 1 hit, personally, this was just based on the production aspect of the movie and the special effects. I thought the special effects and the way that they showcased the powers that each individual Eternal had was absolutely phenomenal. It was stylistically very appealing. I liked all of it. And then how each of them had different powers, yet it was showcased so nicely. I think that was a very solid yes for me in terms of the production value. For my second hit, it had to do with the scene that we saw with Cersei and Arishem. This was the time when they were having their celestial conversation or Zoom call or whatever you want to call it. And Arishem is explaining the entire history of the Eternals and essentially the history of the universe, and how their job is to go to a planet, allow growth in the population to feed the birthing celestial that is within the core in order for that celestial to be born and then recreate the cycle of creating new planets and new worlds. And I thought this was a phenomenal explanation. The special effects were ridiculous, and we saw, the Forge, how these Eternals aren't even like living beings. Just to see that scene and really showcase the progression of the MCU history within that backstory just really was a pivotal moment for characters like Cersei to realize, like, we've been doing this for billions of years, and here we are thinking that we're only 5,000 years old. We have been literally slaves to the Celestials, and now it's time for a change. So I thought this scene was phenomenal. And for my last hit, it's got to be a shout out to my boy, the sleeper of this movie, Druig. I personally really liked his storyline. I think it was crazy to see how him as a character who has powers of mind control and manipulation can't use his powers because of this greater being that is Arishem, who said you guys can only intervene when deviants get involved. So Druig, being able to essentially save the world from all of its madness, greed, and violence, has to sit back and just watch, because if he intervenes, it'll affect the current flow of time and the way things are supposed to go, and it's just heartbreaking to him, which is why he's isolated in the forest, has his little clan, and that is it. And even in the end, when he explains to, I believe it was Cersei, he says, I have the power to eliminate all that is bad from human beings, and we could just live a beautiful life. He said, but I have to live with the fact that I can't do that, because if I do that, then they are no longer human beings. They're robots similarly to us. They are just following the rules and following the path that we have set them on, and they have no capability of finding their own value in life. So solid character right there, and I am so excited to see where they go with him and where they can continue his story progression. And lastly for me, the 1 miss I had was, unfortunately, the storyline for Kingo and Sprite. I thought those were the maybe 2 least developed Eternals that we had. I understood Kingo's storyline where he was that movie buff and he loved acting and doing all those things with his movies to really showcase like his fame and glory. However, at the very end, when the team split and it was Icarus trying to allow the emergence to happen and the other Eternals to prevent it, I didn't quite buy the fact that Kingo was okay with the emergence to happen. If he has been this celebrity, loves Earth, loves people on there, why would he be okay with, let's just go ahead and let the emergence occur, and all of these people that I've come connected with, they'll just die and we'll move on to the next planet. It didn't quite sit well with me, the story with Sprite and how she was like, I miss our family, I miss being so tightly close to each other, and being part of the Eternals team. And then at the end, She gets jealous because she has always loved Icarus, so she stabs Cersei at the very end. Like, to me, you know, it was kind of hypocritical of her sense, and in that sense, I feel like they were the two least developed characters. Overall, solid movie. Other than that miss I said, I'd probably give this movie a solid 8.5 out of 10. So let's hear what my boy Cam has to say about his hits and misses, and then we're going to get right into the Forging Theories.
So first and foremost, the movie Eternals was directed by Chloe Zhao, and I have to say that some of her work before, she's really going to make you think, really kind of dive into what is it to really be human, what's that connection looking like between everyone. So when I saw that she was chosen as the director, my mind kind of went somewhere, and I'm like, this is going to be pretty good. We're talking about the original of the MCU, the kind of birthplace of everything. I was super excited to see her as a director, to see, you know, a movie like this and where it could go. But also knowing that it was based on the comics by Jack Kirby. And I've read those and I've seen kind of how that's went, and it wasn't the most popular story, but I think at this point in the MCU, with how much has been established, this was going to be a big movie. I definitely was going into it thinking we're really going to kind of see what does it mean to be human and what does that look like. So my first hit of the entire movie was the power level of the Eternals, and they didn't feel too OP, they didn't feel too overpowered, and I really appreciated that from the movie, because the thing that makes me nervous moving forward is, are these new space-based characters going to be so far out of the realm of how does anyone defeat them? How does anyone from the Avengers or the Defenders or anyone that we see, you know, how are you going to have someone fight against someone who's basically the Justice League, right? Being brought into the MCU. And I think they did a really good job of just maintaining a cap on everyone. All throughout the entire movie, they made sure that the strongest characters had some real weaknesses. And I think that was very evident when you looked at Icarus and when you looked at Crow, two probably the most powerful characters that we've seen on screen. And they never felt like they were too far above everyone else, but you knew that they kind of were. One of the biggest misses for me was the fact that Icarus was so obedient to the Celestials. I think coming from really reading up on the comics before and up to the movie's release date, you know, I was expecting that to be Druig, and I thought that there were moments, especially when they were in the Amazon and the Spanish were fighting the natives, I was like, here it is, this is what's going to happen, this is going to be the turn. It never really happened, and I was slightly disappointed that Icarus was the one who kind of led the charge on, you know, being the yes man. Another hit for me was the introduction of Kit Harington as Dane Whitman, aka the Black Knight, into the MCU. I was so curious to see how they were going to weave him in. And knowing that he was in the Eternals, knowing beforehand that he had that relationship with Cersei, I didn't know if he had his powers, that he had the Ebony Blade. But from start to finish, with our introduction and then kind of the last thing that we see in our post-credit scene, I thought it was fantastic. And really seeing him, if you went through on social media for Marvel and stuff, you know, they had a picture of him as just Dane. And I thought that was so cool to see that it's just him as a character, and there's so much to his character and story arc that I think they did a really nice job on just lighting the smallest flame for him and doing such a slow burn on that character. I could see him being an absolute fan favorite. My final hit, I gotta give my Eternals movie MVP award to Cersei. Between the love stories of her and Dane, the 5,000-year-old story of her and Icarus, her love for her team and the other 9 Eternals, and then just her overall love of humanity. And I think the biggest thing overall with her was she literally stood up and defied a Celestial. So for me, my overall score for this movie was going to be a 9 out of 10. So obviously, we have 2 post-credit scenes, mid-credit and then a real true post-credit scene. And then we're going to go through our theories. But first, where do you see the Eternals as a group going from here?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It's interesting because the Eternals team right now is split in 2. You have Cersei, Phastos, and Kingo were taken from Arishem to essentially pay their judgment and their time in limbo, I guess we can call it, while they're getting judged for their crimes against the emergence.
Hmm.
And then you also have the Earth-based, or not the Earth-based, the space-based characters who are out searching for the rest of the Eternals, and it is Thena, Makari, and Druig who run into Star Fox. So I almost feel like it's going to be like an Infinity War style where Thor goes on in his own path to Nidavellir, and then he ends up meeting them at the very end, and they converge storylines. What about you?
I mean, it's a good point seeing that a big group of 10 is split now and you have 3 and 3, right? You have majority of the fighters, really the top 2 are still together. So you have Makari and Thena, and then Druig in there who can come through, right, on his own. And then, like you said, you'll have Kingo, who is non-existent, so we really didn't see an end resolution with him, and really, I don't think he's that great of a fighter anyways. And then you have Fastos.
Fastos, yeah.
I always say that wrong.
You said it in the last video too. You're like,
and then Cersei, right? I don't know. I always get stuck on that. So having them be where they are, right? You kind of have that Loki moment where you really I don't think we'll get too much action from them. I think it'll be more that philosophical good versus evil, those conversations, flashbacks, all those kinds of things that they can do. But then now and this will take us into mid-credit scene, you'll have the 3 who encountered Pip and Star Fox, Eros, Thanos' brother, right? They can go somewhere and take them on a wild ride. I feel like that's like Thor being with Rocket and going to Nidavellir, like you said, like that's like the adventure part of the Eternals. I think they did a really good job with those 2, splitting them up how they did and leaving potential for possible returns. I know you had a good point with Icarus, so do you mind throwing that through again?
Oh yeah, we forgot to mention Icarus, but we saw at the end he goes and he basically flies into the sun. And like I said off screen, I didn't take this as like his suicide. I took it as his punishment for everything that he did, how he betrayed his family as the Eternals. This was his version of punishing himself. I don't think it'll kill him flying through the sun, because I feel like he has the durability to take it, kind of like Thor took the energy from the dying star. However, he is going to be in deep shit pain. He's going to have to recover, and then he's going to go down his path of redemption. So that's how I see it. I know you said a few things on what you thought that whole scene could have meant. So go ahead and lay it out for us if you want.
I mean, the thing with the Eternals is I think that they have an opportunity to be reborn, if you will, right? You have all those minds that we saw in the movie, the previous lives that they have, and they're not human beings, right? There's a slight deviation that comes from the comics to the adaptation of the MCU in the movie, of how you have them basically, they're a bunch of visions, essentially synthetic beings that were given straight, just 10 Vishans out here. And you have the potential for them to simply be recreated and to have their previous memories from however long ago that they were, recently downloaded or uploaded. I could see that there's a new Icarus that can come through, right? It's going to look exactly the same. However, he's not going to have those same experiences left over from the recent Earth experience that he had. But I think, again, you can still have that redemption arc from the love that Cersei would have for him, the love that the whole remaining Eternals will have for him. And I think now being where they're at, I think he has the opportunity to see the Celestials in a different light and not be as controlled and brainwashed as he was. Because he was diehard, like he was all the way, whatever Arsham said, and like that's what he's going to do. That's what their mission was. But I think now putting him in a different scenario with having compromised celestial ideals behind it, you're finally going to get like that, like badass Icarus who's just going to tear through, and you need someone who's strong enough to go up against whatever's going to come in the future for them too. But flipping over to and getting into the mid-credit scene, what are your thoughts on where they move forward now that they've introduced Thanos' brother, basically his sidekick Pip, with the three Eternals?
Yeah, I mean, for me, bro, you know I'm a diehard Thanos fan. So the minute he comes out and says, I am the brother of Thanos, I was already getting hyped because the first thing that I thought of was backstory. We're going to be able to see a young Thanos on Titan. We're going to see his father. We're going to see just so much more depth into the mythology that is Thanos and the deviants on the planet Titan, and maybe even other storylines that come across with that. However, I think it's interesting because before the post-credit scene, it didn't seem like an Eternal can have a family, right? So like if Star Fox is a legitimate Eternal, we know that he was created in the Forge. How does he have a biological brother that is Thanos? Like where does that storyline converge, and how is that an explanation? If so, are they going to confirm and say that Thanos is a deviant? And if he was a deviant, then the Eternals totally failed when it came down to the events of Infinity War and Endgame. Like, bro, where were they at?
Yeah, 100%. I think that it's very possible to two of your points. One, that Thanos isn't purely, I mean, he's huge, he's purple, he's ugly, right? When you look at most of the Eternals, like, for the most part, they look fairly similar to human beings, right? So there's something that's amiss there. And I think the fact that with the power of the Unimind, Cersei had the ability to alter Sprite, which means that they would be human, which means that they could procreate. So there's a chance that I'm thinking that they changed the backstory to be either mother or father is deviant and celestial, but it was like the deviant that was like the last form of Crow that we saw, like intelligent, they evolved, they're very human-like, those types of things. And there was some sort of like crossing or mix up, or maybe even the past person on Titan, like they figured out the whole celestial thing. And you had a group of Eternals and Deviants who were like, we need to come together to create the perfect thing to stop the Celestials to be powerful enough.
Yep.
So it's like if they tried to create a new line of someone, and like that's where you get a Thanos.
Say a quick point, especially now after we know what we know of the emergence. It's almost like you can say, you could theorize, you can forge a theory that Thanos, young Thanos, would have known of the celestial emergence due to his relationship with his brother being an Eternal and what an Eternal's mission is. So if young Thanos would have known that the overpopulation of every planet would eventually cause to the rapid production of, let's say, life force or human life force that a emerging celestial can intake, then his snap essentially prolonged that entire process and could have saved the universe for somebody else to come along and really stop the emergence from ever happening as a whole. And like even just adding that depth to it just makes him just even more badass character.
I mean, think of it. Could you imagine like putting those two ideas together? His mother and father were were eternal and deviant, who figured out what the Celestials were doing. And this whole time he's been taught like, get rid of people, get rid of people, get rid of people, because it's exactly like in the trailer. Everything you just said, the prolonging of the celestial Tiamat being born was from his snap. But that didn't just delay Earths. Think about that. That delayed all of them.
Every celestial that is supposed to
Every
emerging
celestial.
everywhere. Yeah. that's like, bro, this dude just literally saved the
So-
universe. He literally saved the universe. That just goes to show that the scale that the Avengers were trying to bring everybody back is a very like minimal portion of the total grand schemes of the entire universe that is the MCU. It's crazy. It's crazy to think about, and I'm getting chills thinking about it, bro. All right, so now that we got that taken care of, I gotta know, bro, what do you think is the direction they're heading after that amazing post-credit scene with Kid Harington and your boy Mahershala Ali, Blade?
Listen, as soon as I heard his voice, like that was like straight goosebumps, and I just looked and I was like I remember just as soon as I got out of the theater, recorded, had to call you, and I was like, this is it. Like, was that Mahershala Ali? But dude, I think that was the smartest decision that they could have made to include that specific character, Blade, vampires, magic, dark realm, like that kind of stuff. Because if you think about it, what better way to flesh out a character than to have them use a sword that is a bloodthirsty sword, to have him go berserker on, let's say it's other vampires or other like creatures of the night or whatever it might be, whatever way that they go with Blade. But like, it's not human beings. He can still show all the bloodlust. And like, you have a human who's more thirsty for blood than a vampire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's like, I feel like that's going to be such a cool way. And I hope that we see like full on Black Knight in Blade, because I think we can get a little like sketchy with the way that Dane Whitman would be of like his past, his uncle, those things. Like Magic Merlin, like you could have so much backstory and keep it like mystical based if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And you have two like badass swordsmen that could just be running through the entire movie. Like, I think that was an extremely smart move. I think the way that they are handling his character so far is amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I think the sky's the limit for Black Knight.
Dude,
Sky is the absolute like what do you think? I think he could be one of the best characters. I think he could be like Black Panther level for me.
bro, for real. Like, there's two sleepers in that movie. My boy Druig, that man had a phenomenal story. And then Black Knight. But the thing with Black Knight is we haven't seen the entirety of his story. It's just beginning. And the tee up is oh my god, man. They sawbait that shit perfectly. But I would have never expected Blade to come up. You know, I gave my prediction on what I thought was going to happen in the post-credit scene. Said he was going to draw the Blade. But for Blade to come in there, it makes perfect sense. Like, them two working together. The first thing I thought was like a Midnight Suns team. Like, you get Black Knight, Blade, Ghost Rider, Moon Knight, some characters that are like very mystical and all that kind of shit, and they go and take out like some kind of like reincarnated like enchantress or sorceress. Like, dude, how sick. Like, let's say this team that they're making right here with Blade and Black Knight and a couple other characters like I just mentioned go up against a threat similarly to like the events of the Suicide Squad, where there's a huge enchantress who basically mummifies all these people, and they're the ones that have to go and stop her. I can easily see a team like this going in there and just tearing shit up, like straight beast mode style, you know?
Do you see Blade and Black Knight potentially making an appearance in Multiverse of Madness?
Bro, I had no idea we were even going to see Blade already. I think a cool little cameo like that would totally tee him up and get people hyped to go see them in their own, you know, their own movie or whatever.
Hey, I need to know, what is the main theory that you have forged with the ending of the Eternals, right? I know we had a lot about mutants, the mutates. We had that in the last video of like what we kind of thought was going to come from this and how, but like now knowing what we know, now seeing what we've seen, what's the next big chunk that you see coming from this or after this?
One, honestly, I feel like where the movie ended, I don't personally see the Eternals fitting in on Earth. I think their storyline has almost reached its tail end when it comes to Earth. Yes, they stopped Tiamat's emergence. However, there's other planets now that they have to go and try to save, and as well as maybe come across other Eternals that they said, who have maybe been brainwashed or whatever. They're going to try to go work with them, get them out of the mind manipulation or whatever it is that they're under, and get them to all work together to finally defeat Erishim or whoever else the biggest celestial threat is. So I don't personally foresee any of the Eternals other than maybe Sprite, because she's the only one who's still on Earth, running into any of the mainstream Avengers. That being said, I can easily see them crossing over in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Let's say Adam Warlock pulls up and somebody confuses him for an Eternal, or Captain Marvel pulls up and goes toe-to-toe with Icarus. Like, shit like that would be sick. And I feel like that can easily work. They just got to write it in and somehow get them to cross paths.
I think the introduction of like Star Fox and Pip really was to just kind of be used as a quick transportation to new areas in the space-based MCU. And I think that briefly gets us a few more steps closer to Galactus as a whole. I think that he's being positioned like, I think the Celestials are here as a threat, and I think Galactus is going to be here as a threat. But this threat up here is going to be taken by Earth characters, the Avengers. Like, I think that's like an Avengers 5 or even 6 maybe kind of thing. And I'm still hanging on the whole Silver Surfer thing showing up. And the reason why I still hang on to that is if he's going to be the main herald for Galactus and he's looking for new planets, I mean, the fact that the Celestials wanted this specific planet and it has that much energy and those many sentient beings on it, that it's good enough for a Celestial, I feel like it would be good enough for Galactus. Show up, and how do we not get Galactus? I mean, we have the Fantastic Four coming up. We are talking about gigantic beings that are just roaming space. Like, I just feel like it's kind of a no-brainer for the next big level threat to be a Galactus.
Yeah.
So I'm still hanging on to that.
Well, there you guys have it. Straight non-stop forging theories with a little bit of hits and misses in the first half. But you guys have made it this far. Let us know what your top theories are coming out of Eternals. Let us know if you have any theories based on the first post-credit scene, second post-credit scene. Stick around for the next collabs. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys next time.